Welcome to the Feminine Principle podcast, heart-centered conversation for soul-centered women who are on a path of self-discovery. I'm your host, Nicola, shamanic practitioner, shadow and soul integration coach, and the creatrix behind the Feminine Principle, supporting women to redefine the relationship they have with themselves, others, and Mother Earth through the magic hidden in their unconscious. For more information, please visit thefeminineprinciple.com.
Hello, lovelies. And so we are continuing our symbolism of the coronavirus. And in this episode, I am exploring the lungs. So as we know, coronavirus affects the lungs. It affects the respiratory system. And so, we get fever, we start to have a shortness in breath, we struggle to breathe. And so this is really symbolic because the breath is our life force. So the breath, when we learn how to work with the breath, it can help us change our state of consciousness at every given moment. But we have to bring our full attention and our awareness to the breath to be able to engage that intrinsic and innate power of ours. And so this is actually one aspect of our human beingness that we ignore over and over and over again, because we've actually become disconnected from the power of the breath, because we don't breathe properly, we don't engage with the breath, because we are so focused on accumulating on the outside, so focused on investing all of our attention and our awareness on building safety, security, and stability in the external, that we actually forget to breathe. We forget to tune in for a moment and sit quietly with the breath. Because to sit quietly with the breath can make us feel really, really uncomfortable in the beginning, because we have created our lives to ignore sitting with the self. So we want to run and run and run and run so that we don't have to sit and face ourselves. But the breath helps us to tune in. It helps us to reconnect with our source energy. It helps us to reconnect with our heart and to be comfortable in the darkness which is hidden inside of us. And what's actually really interesting is that the mode of death related with the lungs is drowning. This is the lungs filling up with water. So we have this sensation of drowning. And then also, when we get pneumonia, which is, this is all to do with the lungs, what is happening is that the lungs are filling up with fluid, so it stops the breath. It's stopping our vital life force. And so what's really interesting is that in Chinese medicine, the lungs are the seat of grief. However, to grieve so means also to love so, because we cannot grieve so if we have not loved so. And so grief and love are actually two very powerful emotions, which actually go very much hand in hand. However, now what we can see and what we can engage in and understand on an individual and a collective level is that we are drowning in grief. We are drowning in unresolved grief and sadness. And it's all collected here in the lungs. And so coronavirus, what it's doing, it's attacking our lungs in a way to help us tune into what unresolved wounding and trauma now needs our full attention. What needs to be healed and integrated so our lungs are no longer drowning in this unresolved sadness and grief. And so what happens is that because we've invested and we've created an identity based on everything in the external, it's because we actually don't want to sit and face and be with all of this unprocessed grief that resides within us. We'll do everything that we possibly can to ignore it. So we will run off, we'll keep ourselves busy. So we see this in today's society. It's better to be busy, doing, going, because that way we don't have to stop and sit with ourselves and actually feel it. So we do everything in our power to distract ourselves. And so this is where, pathological consumerism comes in. So we need to buy and buy and buy and buy, because we're trying to fill and to suffocate all of that unresolved grief that was being held in the lungs. And so what's actually happening now with coronavirus, is that we are being forced to stop. We are being confined to our homes. We're in quarantine. And so we can't run anymore. And so suddenly all the things that we would do to distract ourselves on the external have been taken away from us. We can't just nip down to the shop and spend, whatever money on clothes or wallpaper or whatever it is to keep ourselves busy. We can't just take a flight and go off to a different country. We can't just jump in the car and take ourselves for a drive. We can't do any of those things anymore. We're confined to the house. So suddenly we're having to sit with all of this energy and all of this unresolved grief. But for most of us, we don't realize that we've got all of this unresolved grief, because now what's happening on an individual and a global scale is that we are now in a moment of total fear and total panic. Because everything that we have been accustomed to and we've taken for granted, and the identity that we've created for ourselves on the external, has been taken away from us. And so suddenly we're in a state of fear and panic, like, what am I going to do? Who am I without all of this stuff? Who am I? What am I going to do? What am I going to do with the kids? What am I going to do with my business? What am I going to do to earn money? And it's just fear and panic, also to the extreme of what am I going to do if I get it? And all these what ifs are all coming to the surface, and they feed this psychosis over and over and over again. Because ultimately, we are still trying to run away from sitting with the self. We're still trying to disassociate and ignore what is coming to the surface. And so this really gives us a moment of great power, so if we're willing to sit down and sit with the self and look at all that fear and that panic and go into it, we're going to find a hell of a lot of unprocessed grief sat there right in our lungs. And therefore we can learn how to redefine our relationship with it. Start to feel it, start to release some of it, because we can't continue with all of this energy, which is actually polluting and drowning our unique source, our unique nature, our sovereignty. We're drowning in it. And so therefore, the more that we can release from the lungs and the more we can engage with this inner process, the more we're going to start to feel that reconnection to self. We're going to start to feel empowered again, because we are actually starting to work with the self as an individual, as part of the collective. We're starting to work with the challenges which have been put before us. And we are starting to become part of the solution through our own behaviors and our own actions. Rather than just waiting for somebody else to come and save us, we're actually taking an active part in rebalancing and reclaiming our sovereignty. And so, when we look at the lungs on a collective level, going back to Mother Nature, the lungs of the earth, what is going on? We need trees, okay? Trees, help the earth to breathe. But we're going through massive deforestation. And why are we going through deforestation? Because our need to consume and consume and consume is feeding that industry. It's all for profit at the expense of Mother Earth, because we are demanding as a human race more and more and more and more in whatever area we demand it in. And so they're chopping down the forests, to meet our demand. That's not something that they are doing. We are part of that problem through our need for more and more and more. And so therefore, the earth cannot breathe. And so another issue is pollution. The earth cannot breathe anymore, because we are polluting the earth so much with our consumerism, with our unconscious behavior to feed and feed and feed this more energy, that she can't breathe. There's planes up in the sky all the time. There's trains, there's boats and cruise liners which are polluting our waters. And then there's the cars. We take a car to go 5 minutes down the road. I mean, really? Is this how unconscious we've become? And so Mother Earth, she is suffering. She can't breathe anymore. She is drowning in our need for more through our pathological consumerism. So we are collectively suffocating the earth because we are not taking responsibility and asking ourselves, with everything that we purchase or every time we use something, what is the effect on the planet for me doing this one little action? So we all have to take responsibility in a very, very different way. But this is what coronavirus is now showing us on an individual and collective level through the symbolism of the lungs. And so now what we're seeing after being forced to stop, so, I'm in Italy, so we are now on day 7 of the lockdown, but it's absolutely magnificent because the earth is breathing. So all the smog-filled cities like Milan, for example, which was always grey, heavy, it's gone. The sky is blue. She can breathe. The waters in Venice, now, because there's not all the traffic on the waters, they're cleaning themselves. And it's like suddenly, oh my God, by forcing us to stop and do as we're told and be inside the house, she's breathing again. Mother Earth is able to breathe again and replenish her natural resources that we have taken for granted, that we have abused and we have used to give us pleasure, to fill our unconscious needs. And so by working with the symbolism of coronavirus, we're able to step into a moment of completely and utterly changing our behavior, changing the way in which we engage and interact with each other, but also how we engage and interact with Mother Earth, becoming more conscious about our choices regarding the purchases that we make or the trips that we take or where we need to go or what we need to do, because we are part of the solution. But if we feed into that panic and fear, then we're actually creating more pollution. And so the more that we are being challenged to stay indoors, the more that we are being given the opportunity to go within, to sit with the self, to do our shadow work, to really reveal, heal, and integrate on a much deeper level. And so I would love to hear your comments below. What is your experience? What sadness and grief are you holding on to that now needs to be let go of? What are you afraid of? What's causing you to panic? What of the old way is asking you now to be resolved? And of course, if you are ready to dive in and explore this a magnificent moment in time, but also to really go deep within to your own shadow, soul, and psyche, then come over and visit us at thefeminineprinciple.com. And we're ready. This is a moment for us all to step up and step in. Thank you so much, lovelies. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Feminine Principle podcast. If you have enjoyed listening and received value from this episode, then please consider supporting the work to create a circle of reciprocal generosity. The link is below, with love and gratitude.